Hello zusammen, welcome to another edition of what I'm going to now call Feedback with Sonntag. Just a little bit of background information. I currently do work at the University of Waterloo in the Center for Teaching Excellence. I have a new role there now, so whereas before doing this on a Friday was relatively easy to do, it might not be the case right now. So I'm going to do this on Sunday. It gives me a bit more time to get all the grading done and have a better understanding of the kind of feedback that I can give to you on a weekly basis. So apologies for those of you who might have been expecting this on Friday. I'll try to get this routinely out on the Sunday then, so that again it encompasses everything that we've done over the past week. All right, I'll jump right into it then. The two primary things that I saw this week, or that Sarah and I saw, that I think is worth bringing to your attention. The first is the use of the dative case, and I think it's useful to just have a bit of a refresher on what the dative case is and why we use it. Okay, so a sentence in its essence needs two things. It needs a subject and a verb. The most basic sentence will only have those two things, but without those two things, it's not really a sentence. You can't have a sentence without a subject and a verb. Now, the next most common aspect to be included in a sentence then is an object. So in that case, the subject is the one doing the action, the verb is the action itself, describes the action, and the object then is the thing the action is being done to. So again, and when we have an object in a sentence, we use the accusative case for the object, okay? Now the dative case comes in when we have an indirect object. The indirect object then is something that is the receiver of the action. So the verb itself isn't necessarily describing or isn't directly impacting the indirect object as it impacts the direct object, but nonetheless the indirect object is receiving the action to some capacity. So for example, a simple sentence is Ich gebe dir den Brief. So what do we have there? We have ich, the subject. We have gebe, the verb. Now we have our object, which is den Brief, right? And there you can see it's a den Brief, not der Brief, because it is in the accusative case. And again, that's the thing that is receiving. That's the thing that is the verb is doing, right? The verb is doing that to the object. Okay. The final aspect then is the dir, the indirect object. That's the person receiving the action. So the giving of the letter is being received by dir, by you, the person. So a couple things that I think are important to know with dative case is that indirect object can be anyone, anything. It doesn't have to be related to the subject in the same way that a reflexive verb would have to be related in a sentence to the subject. So I can say, ja, ich gebe dir den Brief. Ich gebe uns den Brief. Ich gebe mir den Brief. I could say I give myself the letter. So it doesn't really matter, but you do want to make sure that the dative case and the direct object or the indirect object that you're using does have or is used in the dative case correctly. One other thing as well I think important to note is that you'll see that with adjective endings do change according to whether or not we're using the accusative case or the dative case. And there might be some times where you're asked to put an ending onto an adjective and you might not know what to put there. And basically that's okay, because adjective endings is something that we kind of will touch upon later on in the course. Certainly if you take German 201, that's when you really get to know them, and that's when you're expected to know them. For right now, I don't think it matters too much to have the correct adjective ending, unless it's a specific phrase that occurs in the textbook. We want you to replicate it or do something similar to that. So if you notice a phrase or an idiom or something using adjective endings that relate to the dative case, yes, use them as well. Otherwise, don't put too much stock into that, because there's a whole wealth of things to learn about adjective endings for dative case that we just are not going to get to in this course, so just be aware of them. The second piece then is with Nebensätze. So we're starting to get a bit more into detail with Nebensätze. And again, Nebensätze are sentences that on their own simply cannot exist. They require another sentence to relate to, because that's the only way that makes sense. They provide basically the conditions of another sentence, and they explain the actions of something else. And they either explain the actions of the sentence that precedes it, or at times they explain the actions of the sentence that is going to come later on, depending on how you want to emphasize things, right? Now what they need then is the use of what's known as a subordinating conjunction. such as wenn, das, weil. I mean, these are the ones that you've encountered thus far and will continue to encounter most frequently. So a couple things with Nebensätze then are that first, they will always begin with that subordinated conjunction. And then the verb with the Nebensatz will always appear at the end of the sentence. But, and this is key as well, is that that verb is conjugated to the subject. And that does differ from one of these other cases where a verb goes to the end of the sentence, like with modal verbs. With modal verbs, yes, we have a verb at the end of the sentence, but it remains in the infinitive case. Whereas with Nebensätze and subordinated conjunctions, yes, a verb is at the end of the sentence, but the verb is then conjugated according to the subject, just like you would normally conjugate a verb. The other key piece is that if a sentence begins with Nebensatz, then the clause that follows will begin with the verb, and then following the verb will be the subject. Otherwise, it retains the normal sentence structure and order. So one example of a sentence could be, also ich habe das Buch gekauft, weil es lustig war. So in that case, we start with the normal sentence, the first part of the clause, ich habe das Buch gekauft. And then we use our subordinated conjunction for our Nebensatz, weil es lustig war. And in that case, we can see the verb's at the end, and it's conjugated with es. Now an alternative sentence could be where we switch things around a little bit. Wenn ich fahre, muss ich auf die Straße konzentrieren. So in that case, we began with wenn ich fahre. So again, we used wenn, verb at the end of the sentence, or at the end of the clause, I should say in that case. And then we start the next part of the clause with muss, with the verb, followed by the subject, and then the rest of the sentence as normal. So wenn ich fahre, muss ich auf die Straße konzentrieren. Okay? So Nebensätze are one of those things that you'll probably find yourself using much more frequently now because they're very useful. It's a way to describe something in a bit more detail in your sentence without needing to go into, well, either two simple sentences or by trying to do something much more complex. Just, start a sentence, and then you want to expand upon it, throw Nebensatz in there and do the expansion that way. Alright, so I think that's about it for this week. All the best on getting your Polizeikontrolle in by tonight at midnight, and otherwise have a good rest of the week. Okay, tschüss.